All rise, we will leave. The mechanism for international criminal tribunals is now in session. Lord,
Please.
new mechanism for Police Tribunal Finance International at U8.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. Registrar, would you please call the case?
Thank you and good afternoon, Your Honor. This is case number MICT 1355. The prosecutor was Radovan Karadžić.
Thank you, Registrar. Mr. Karadžić, can you hear me in a language you understand?
So far I've heard in English, but I think I will manage to hear you in my language.
Thank you, Mr. Karadžić. Appearances of the parties. First counsel for Mr. Karadžić.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Peter Robinson for Radovan Karadžić.
Good afternoon, Mr. Robinson. For the prosecutor, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Katrina Gustafson, Laurel Bragg, Robin Croft, and our case manager, Ian Reid, for the prosecution.
Thank you. As you are aware, in my role as President, I supervise the conditions of detention of detainees under the authority of the mechanism at the United Nations Detention Center. Pursuant to my decision on the request for status conference, issued on 1 April 2016, the purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity to Mr. Karadžić to raise pressing issues in relation to his conditions of detention, including his mental and physical condition. So let me make clear, this is not a regular status conference. I wish to emphasize that as set forth in my decision on request for status conference, any matters related to an appeal in this case will not be discussed during this hearing. This includes matters related to the legal aid funding for Mr. Karadžić's appeal, which, as the registrar stated in his submission on legal aid on appeal filed today, remains under review by the registry. As stated in my decision on request for status conference, an appeals bench will be assigned to this case in due course, and a status conference related to Mr. Karadžić will also be held in due course. Before proceeding, I also wish to recall at the outset that the detainee at the UNDU under the authority of the mechanism may make a complaint concerning the conditions of his detention in accordance with the regulations for the establishment of a complaints procedure for detainees, which applies mutatis mutandis to the mechanism. Where a formal complaint is made to the registrar of the mechanism, the complaint will be investigated promptly and efficiently. The registrar shall respond to the complaint on his own behalf or on my behalf within 1 week of receipt where possible, and in any event, not more than 2 weeks from receipt of the complaint. Turning to the matter before me today, I refer to the response to invitation of the President filed by Mr. Karadžić on 3 April 2016, in which Mr. Karadžić indicates that he wishes to be heard on a pressing matter related to his mental condition and his conditions of detention. Mr. Karadžić, you are hereby invited to raise these matters. If you wish, the discussion can take place in closed session. So do tell me now, Mr. Karadžić, whether you want us to go into a closed session.
Ne, Excellency.
No, Your Honor.
It is indicated that there is no need to go into closed session. The floor is to Mr. Karadžić, or on his behalf to Mr. Pete Robinson, to tell me about the issues you wanted to raise.
Hvala.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you know, I have been forced on several occasions to address you after I addressed other instances in order to achieve some of my rights, and I want to express my respect because I managed to realize those rights of mine only after I had addressed you. I've come here in perfect health because, in the first place, I deal with health, not only mental but other. In these 8 years, my health is deteriorating. It's getting worse from day to day. The tempo of work, the lack of time for the preparation of defense, the inequality of arms, the unfair proceedings, the frustrations caused by badly working technology, which is from the previous century and which I could not obtain in any way, and I even didn't address you about that, but I failed to improve my technical equipment, which sapped my power while dealing with several millions of pages of documents, problems relating to food, and the fact that I have been deprived of some necessities that all educated and cultural people are entitled to. Let me not even mention them, but they do figure and they do represent a problem for all people in detention, including myself. There are other deprivations which are not caused by people's ill will, because the personnel at the DU are exceedingly correct, but the rules date from the 19th century or from some communist or Turkish prison. The people in detention, including myself, feel as if we were half buried. We are being deprived of all benefits of advanced European states in terms of our creative intellectual needs that the Netherlands, as the leading country of the European Union, has not provided in the detention unit. And it is jointly accountable for this with the United Nations. During the 8 years that I have spent here, and while my health was deteriorating, a large number of people got sick, most of them, and most tragically, with diseases marked by malignity, and most of those ended in death. In spite of that, it did not occur to anyone to investigate the high incidence of malignity, nor does, unfortunately, anyone take care to compensate the families who have lost their dearest ones, who have spent years here waiting for the outcome of the proceedings and judgments. Personally, I have made great efforts to make sure that international justice, as designed here, should be honorable and just, even though I had an agreement with Mr. Holbrooke that I should not be put on trial, and Mr. Holbrooke represented both the USA and the United Nations, that is to say, the international community which stands behind this tribunal. Even though I did not acknowledge the legitimacy and legality of the tribunal, for 8 years I have participated in the proceedings in an exemplary manner to make sure that I would not contribute to compromising this tribunal in any way whatsoever, so that the failures that I expect, the failures of this tribunal, would not be something that I could be blamed for, but that only this tribunal itself and its nature could be blamed for it. I am forced to work under the poorest possible technical conditions. After 8 years and 500 days in the courtroom, where I was tried in foreign languages and based on a foreign legal system which does not recognize or acknowledge our own domestic legislation, laws, and constitution, nor is it even in an elementary way familiar with the character of the civil wars which are renewed in our parts every 50 years or so. I had to prove my innocence, and simple truths such as that we were in a civil war, that the war was declared to us by the other side. I was an exemplarily just president. I was opposed to war and war crimes, and together with the entire Serbian leadership, I was very humane, and my people and my army were only harmed by that. All of that has been proven, and it's included in the case file. Even my antagonists from the prosecution confirmed that they do not claim that I have done anything personally, but that it was caused by the policy that I represented. I have secured an acquittal together with my team. I covered all the elements of the accusation arguments, and I refuted everything in an argumented manner with firm evidence. Instead of the only right decision, an acquittal, and allowing me to leave home, I had already packed in the detention unit. That can be confirmed to you by the DU personnel. We now have a judgment which is monstrous, just like the indictment itself was monstrous.
Point to make.
Yes, Your Honor, we've allowed this to go on for some time, but it's quite clear that despite Your Honor's reminder to Dr. Karadžić that the scope of the status conference is limited to his raising any pressing matter relating to his health or conditions of detention, we're straying far away from that. Thank you.
I am aware of that, but my inclination is to allow Mr. Karadžić another 5 minutes. I hope you will not object, and then I will insist on going to the subject. I think it's, Mr. Karadžić has seldom an opportunity to speak about those issues. Let's give him another 5 minutes, and I take it that you have no objection to that.
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Karadžić, if you could limit yourself to 5 more minutes, that would be appreciated.
Hvala, Ekscelencijo. Trudit ću se.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will do my best. So all this has to do with health, absolutely. I have spent 8 years of my life so that this tribunal would work well in my case, and so that I would not sabotage it. Now we have the judgment which astonished me, so that I cannot believe where I am and what is happening to me. It is clear to me now that some of the malignancy which we have been suffering there, I mean malignant diseases, are caused by this lack of power to see an illegality, decision-making that is unlawful, and the helplessness which is the cause and the basis of all the malignancy. There could be other causes that are external as well, but the basic fact is that this judgment, such judgments, which will certainly fall someday, such as the whole institution will, but in the meantime it causes much harm. My conclusion and my reasoning and my proposal is the following. I will not have much benefit from the fact that the indictment will fall through and that the tribunal will be poorly judged in history and in the international community and in the legal profession. If I am spending time here, I'm paying the price for something that will fall through. My proposal is that my stay in the detention unit should be suspended and that I should be released pending the finalization of the legal procedure to uphold or refute this indictment, which would not be endorsed even by first-year students of law. So let me abbreviate this to less than 5 minutes. What occurs to me are other courts, like the Nazi tribunal, which had strength enough to acquit Georgy Dimitrov. And here a judgment is being written against my people in a one-sided manner, so that one cannot see what happened to it and what attacked it. In the meantime, the best people, the elite of the Serbian people, are being kept in dungeons, and judgments are passed, and your honors, some people are serving in prisons which are of poorer quality than the Turkish or communist ones, even though by their status and by everything they deserve to be in prisons with high standards in the European Union. My request and proposal is to decrease the harmful effects. I've already lost 8 years of my life as a completely innocent man, and I would need to waste another 3 years until this is possibly proved. The only right thing would be to exclude all the possibilities of malignancy at the detention unit. And as for the people who do not have to wait, should not be waiting for the judgments to come into force in dungeons and prisons, but to be released pending the final outcome and, of course, to cooperate with the legal institutions.
Mr. Karadžić, you have raised quite a few points, many of them of a general nature. As regards the frequency of malignancy, I took note of your argument there, and I will ask the registrar to look and to report to me on that issue. Let me tell you that, and you will not be surprised, that the assessments we hear from experts about the conditions which prevail in the detention unit are on the whole extremely favorable. And the UNDU is generally regarded as being almost a gold standard of prisons. I wish there would be very many national prisons that would provide the conditions of detentions which the United Nations provides. When there is a specific complaint, I take it very, very seriously, as you know from the past. And if from the catalogue of complaints of a general nature you have made, you would wish either now or in the future to present a concrete complaint, I would assume that you would go through normally that complaint would be submitted to the registrar, through or not the commander of the detention unit. I would take it very, very seriously. From the complaints that you have made today, I note that the only specific thing which comes up is your complaint with regard to malignancy. I can assure you that I'm taking this complaint seriously, and I will request the registrar within a short period of time to report to me on that. As regards the other point that you have made, namely with a request to suspension of your detention, I presume that what you have in mind is some kind of a provisional release. You and your counsel know the rules, and if you want to present a request or a motion to that with regard to that point, you know how to do it, and it will be duly considered. You will realize that I don't accept your general assessment about the nature of this tribunal. I believe that this tribunal has been giving justice in a very persuasive, credible, and reasonable way. And I believe that this is the view of most of the international community, to the extent that I can contribute to making sure that we abide by all the rules pertaining to fairness of trials. You can be assured that I will do so. I will now ask the prosecutor whether she would like to make any comments.
No, Mr. President, thank you.
Is there anything else, Mr. Robinson, that we should consider now?
Actually, Mr. President, if I could just make a few comments. First of all, I want to join my client in thanking you for holding this status conference. I know you weren't obligated to do that, and it's commendable that you were willing to do that today. With respect to Dr. Karadžić's health, I could tell you that I've seen him every day since his judgment. And he's quite distressed over that judgment. He's been like a tiger in a cage since we heard that. And to me, what we have to do is roll up our sleeves and work on the appeal, which brings me to the issue of conditions of detention. So the prosecution's response when we asked for more time for filing our notice of appeal is that, well, there's two of you, myself and Dr. Karadžić, to work on this appeal.
Sir Robinson, I think that I made it clear that we will not be discussing issues pertaining to either timing of notice of appeal or any other matters pertaining to the trial itself. You will realize I called a hearing because of an urgent request by your client because of his health condition, and I would not be comfortable, although I could do so. As president of the tribunal, I'm here in my capacity to make sure that Mr. Karadžić is well taken care of. We are not here to discuss modalities pertaining to the appeal. As you know from what I said, I will do my best to establish an appeals panel as soon as I can, and then we will meet again, and you will have ample opportunity to raise those issues.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm well aware of that. I think perhaps you misunderstood me. I was simply referring to their response as a way of speaking about the conditions of detention and the need for Dr. Karadžić to have facilities at the detention unit that will allow him to play a vital and important role in his defense, because although he's no longer representing himself, it's our hope that we will continue to work much as we did for the last 7.5 years together in preparing his appeal, and I need his help on that, and he needs to have some rudimentary conditions in which he can help me.
So what are the conditions that you would enumerate in this context?
The first thing is his computer. So I don't know, given your position and your age, how much you work with computers, but I can tell you that Dr. Karadžić has the problem when he works on a document, he can't save his work sometimes. I don't know, the frustration of working on something for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, and not being able to save that work is immense for those of us who are frequently working with computers. So that's the first problem. His machine is antiquated.
I appreciate your comment about my age. You are suggesting I'm too young, I take it.
Knowing you, I think you are too young. In any event, Dr. Karadžić also has the problem that sometimes he can't open files that he wants to work with. Now, we've met frequently with the people at the detention unit, and there's a fantastic IT person who works there. But in the end, the answer that we get is that his computer is better than that of the other detainees, and that's all they will do for us. But really, it's not enough. And as a result, Dr. Karadžić really isn't able to function as efficiently as he should be able to in working on his appeal. So that's one very concrete thing that I hope perhaps you could use your good offices to see if that can be improved. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the future and discussing the issues pertaining to the appeal as we go along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriel. I would appreciate it if you would let me know, either now or by motion, what is the type of computer that Mr. Karadžić would be able to use more effectively.
Excellency, what I have is a very old machine, IBM, which is in this net. However, this is very slow and with a lot of other problems in operating. However, what I think that I should have a newer machine, and I also shouldn't be deprived from my laptop, so that I can sit in better conditions to do my preparations. Izvinjavam se, molje da govorim na srpskom.
I apologize. It's better for me to speak Serbian. I sit at the computer 15 hours at a time. That computer is very old, very faulty. Sometimes it freezes, and I have to finish sometimes sooner than I wanted to. I don't see why I would not have the right to my own laptop. In some prisons in Europe, people have access to the internet, controlled access, of course. But still, they do have access, and they are able to keep up with scientific developments, etc. It's quite enough that those of us who are sitting there are half buried. You don't need to deprive us of other necessities.
Any comments from the prosecutor on that?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
I will request the registrar to look seriously into this problem of the computer. I am interested in Mr. Karadžić, as I am interested in the right of all people that we have in detention to have the best possible technical conditions in which they can work on their cases. Now, apart from the issue of malignity and the issue of the computer, I don't think that there is anything concrete that has come up from our meeting today. Prosecutor, do you agree with that?
Yes, Mr. President.
So I think that we could call this meeting to an end, and I am glad to have had this opportunity to listen to Mr. Karadžić. The court will now rise.
All rise. We are